Hi everyone! Today I'd like to talk with you a bit about how to prepare for your voice lessons each week. And I think when it comes to preparing for your voice lessons, you could think about this as two separate things. One, what you do during the week to prepare with your practicing and your planning. And the other, what you do on the day of your lesson, as well as maybe the night before your lesson, in terms of preparing yourself for your voice lesson. So I think one thing to remember is that if you are a voice major, your lesson should be the focal point to your week. It really should be, along with maybe your weekly coaching. It is one of the most important things you do as a singer, as a voice major. So treat it as a high priority. I talked a little bit about in my video about practicing that it's easy to kind of put aside your voice lesson in a sense in your thinking because it doesn't feel like there's an assignment due every single day, but there actually is, and that's with your practicing. But in terms of your planning for your lessons, make sure that you have a goal in mind of the repertoire you'd like to do in your lesson. I think it's a really good idea if your lesson's like on a Wednesday, for example, that Thursday morning, you look at your rep and you think, okay, this is my goal. I'm going to either learn this new song for my next lesson, or I'm going to plan to bring in these two songs maybe for my next lesson. Have a really clear goal of what you're going to work on your lesson and communicate that with your pianist right away so that he or she can focus on that rep for your next lesson. As much as you can stick to that plan, it really helps both you and your pianist, and it helps your teacher because you're prepared more that way. So be sure to rehearse the song or aria, or the two songs or arias, or maybe three that you're planning to do in your next lesson with your pianist before coming to your lesson. That's very important. So that should be a way of focusing your rehearsal with your pianist as well. Do make sure that you do your research on your songs ahead of time before you bring them to your lesson so that you know what you're singing about. Never come to your lesson with something sort of half learned, either musically or in terms of really not knowing your translation at all or the poetry. That should be a first priority. When you first start learning something, you must spend some time with the poem, and if it's in a foreign language, spend some time with the translation to really know what you're singing about. That's your responsibility to know that when you come to your lesson with this repertoire. And again, your teacher and your pianists are not responsible for teaching you notes and rhythms. So it's really up to you to be learning the music as well as you are capable of before bringing it to your rehearsal and your lesson. So another thing to think about besides the preparation you do during the week before your lesson is how you prepare on the day of your lesson. And I would add to that the night before, because if your lesson is a high priority for you, you need to be in your best physical, mental shape for your lesson. So if your lesson is, again, I'm going to use Wednesday as an example, at Wednesday at 10 a.m., make sure you get a good night's sleep on Tuesday nights. That should always be a goal, that you get to bed at a reasonable hour on Tuesday nights so that you're well rested and can sing well in your lesson. Wake up early if it happens to be that you have a morning lesson. You do need to be awake a couple hours before you go to your lessons so that your voice is going to be ready to go for those lessons. It's tricky if your lesson's at 9 a.m., I get it, but maybe you should be up by 7 if your lesson's at 9, and make sure you have time for a solid warm-up. So speaking of warm-up, always try to warm up for maybe 10 or 15 minutes before your lesson. That gets rid of what I call the cobwebs on the voice, so that when you get to your lesson, you're ready to go with your vocal technique, and you're not going to be kind of wasting time clearing your throat all the time with the junk that hangs out on the cords sometimes. So make sure you are warmed up. You don't want to over warm up, I would say. Sometimes I have students come to their lessons having sung for an hour or an hour and a half in the practice room before the lesson, and by the time they get to their voice lesson, they're tired. So don't over warm up on days of your lesson. Definitely just a little warm up is what we're looking for so that we can do more vocalizing in your lesson. Along the same lines, try not to schedule coachings before your voice lessons or rehearsals before your lessons. You really want to keep your voice pretty fresh so that you can get the most out of your voice lesson. Anytime you come to your lesson when you're feeling vocally fatigued, we just can't accomplish as much as we would if you're in a better state. So for coachings, try to schedule them on other days of the week. If you're having coachings and rehearsals with your pianist, other days of the week, not the same day as your voice lesson. Just trying to limit your singing as much as possible. I think the choir rehearsals this year will not usually be before people's lessons, but in general, if you do have choir before your voice lesson, take it easy on that day of the week, because again, you could find yourself kind of tired when you get to your voice lesson if you don't. I think those are kind of the main things I would say. So we always want to have a bit of a warm-up, but not too much of a warm-up. Don't overdo it on the day of your voice lesson, and really have some very clear goals about what you'd like to sing each week in terms of repertoire, what you might want to accomplish in your vocalises, even stuff that you can talk to your teacher about. Always come to your lesson with a plan if you can, and your teacher can work with you on that. All right, thanks everyone.